provided in at the beginning is when we came back from break. Teachers participated in those PDs, but can go back and watch these videos in the section of the PD and also find the resources. This page also provides content-specific resources for teachers, focusing on distance learning resources for content. It provides instructional guides, scaffolds for English learners, added strategies, and sample lessons at staff's fingertips.
So as we collaborated with SEA to develop the Memorandum of Understanding regarding distance learning, we focused on providing access to connectivity devices to all students and teachers. Mr. De La Calzada will address this later in the presentation, but we also focused on types of delivery of instruction, and we settled primarily on three major ones and then a fourth one. The three major ones are hard copy lessons, asynchronous instruction, synchronous instruction, and a blended model. And we'll discuss each of those in the following slides. So with a synchronous model, which means that the teacher and the students are on in real time, a time schedule for students and teachers was established district-wide to ensure there would be no competition for time slots or confusion. We focused on the best practice and limited the video conferencing time to 30 minutes or less per class per day. Teachers established office hours for individual and small group discussions and support times as needed. With the asynchronous, which means that learners are scheduled in their own time to engage in the learning. This provides the most optimum flexibility for our students and our teachers, and it was the established model for our program as we commenced distance learning. All lessons and content are uploaded in the first day of the work week, and so students and teachers are able to engage at different times with the work, and teachers are able to provide feedback to students throughout the week.
While not a requirement, synchronous sessions have been conducted by many teachers for the purpose of checking in with students, providing direct instruction, and answering questions and clarifying assignments. And student feedback after week 1 of distance learning shows a highly favorable response to any and every attempt to conduct face-to-face sessions.
The blended model is a combination of asynchronous and synchronous models. In this example, teachers create lessons where they may deliver the assignments asynchronously and communicate with students using a group chat or face-to-face conversation, making it a blended model.
So the fourth option was a paper copy, and we wanted to ensure that all of our students who did not have internet or accessibility to a device at this time would be able to have the information and needed resources. Each site developed a copy distribution and collection plan, and this plan was to include 3 to 4 weeks of lessons developed by teachers that would then be provided to students. Sites developed these plans and they're going live this week. Family and students along with staff are notified of these initial plans in a district-wide email sent out on April 18th. This was also uploaded to our homepage, website, and the district learning website. Site principals shared details of their site team plans with their sites last week and at the beginning of this week. So one of the essential elements was grading and the expectations, and in our SEA collaboration meetings, we spent a lot of time discussing about expectations and what would happen in instruction, and that focus on equity and making sure that no harm was impacting students. We looked at grading based on formative assessments, and what that means is that teachers would look at what students are understanding and what areas they would need supports in, and it was really to inform instruction. Although we as a district have continued to maintain the A through F grades for students instead of going to a credit, no credit, or pass fail, the reason we did not transition to that was that Infinite Campus does provide some limitations, and we were concerned about really looking at the integrity of our transcript. We did not want to take what had taken 18 months to create in the past and go backwards. So we maintained the A through F grades, but we were looking at only for grade improvement and no penalty for students. And in the MOU, we talked about looking at March 13th, the day that we closed our instruction, our in-person instruction, as looking at that as a target date for assignments that had been turned in and completed by that time. We also talked about setting up progress report periods. So May 15th will be the first progress report period conducted under the distance learning plan, and final grades will be June 5th.
We have also provided additional supports for our English learners. The distance learning website offers teachers an EL webpage with resources to support English learners in engaging in lessons. Our ELD Tosa has created and downloaded lessons for teachers to access easily. She also has made herself available to support ELD teachers with the adopted curriculum for ELD. She, along with all content-specific TOSAs, are also available to support SEI teachers and all teachers in the effort to support English learners. Within each content-specific course in the website, we also have a variety of teacher resources for English learners from the CDE, the California Reading and Literature Project, Achieve 3000, AVID, and other areas of focus that focus on scaffolds with reading, listening, speaking, and writing to engage students in learning through distance learning.
Anna Maria, I think you want me to take this next section.
Yes, Dr. Fulcher.
Okay. Well, good evening. As a result of tremendous collaboration with a number of stakeholders, 4 critical priorities were identified. Paramount, of course, was the safety and health of our students and staff, as well as our immediate community, the South County region. We also wanted to make sure students continued receiving a free and appropriate public education, otherwise known as FAPE. Services, of course, will look a lot different in a distance environment, but we want to make sure we provide as reasonable set of supports as possible in the best way we can. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the special education website, which is also attached to the material you have today, I would encourage you to do so. It's one of the best, I think, in the county and the region. The third priority for the special services or special education department was to ensure that we documented our efforts in working with our students. We wanted to make sure we had not just evidence of the work they did, but we certainly wanted to measure any progress they've made over the past few months. And in some cases, we certainly want to document if there's been some regression in skills as well, so we can provide some additional support, as Mrs. Hall was saying earlier, over the summer months or at other critical times during the school year. And then lastly, the issues around compliance are still in place. We still must make sure IEP meetings are held. Any assessment plans that have been signed, we need to ensure that those students receive the type of assessments and evaluations based on the plan that was developed with their parents or guardians. The last line in item 4 is that IDEA wasn't built for this. It wasn't built for a pandemic. It didn't have that in mind, and so people are scrambling around trying to figure out what to do for those students with IEPs. I think we're ahead of the curve in terms of providing a service that our parents and students will certainly benefit from. Ana Maria?
Thank you.
As we move forward with the launching of our distance learning, our team of Tosas continue to support all content teachers through setting up talks with a Tosa. And this week, our Tosa team has launched and established office hours, but knowing that our Tosas are always available to support teachers at any time. Tosas provide support with the different distance learning tools. They also provide content-specific support and updates. They collaborate with PLCs to develop lessons, and they check in with site curriculum specialists, department leads, and PLC leads. Lastly, our TOSAs continue to vet new resources as we update our distance learning webpage.
So with the School Counseling and Guidance Association, we also collaborated very closely, and we continue to do so in terms of developing the MOU and also the professional development for counselors and support for students. Currently, the curriculum and instruction team conducts a check-in weekly with the comprehensive high school counselors, the middle school counselors, and alternative education and learning center counselors to ensure that they're getting the supports and the information needed. We're also supporting counselors with their own social emotional well-being. A lot of them are dealing with students that do have anxiety, depression, and other social emotional needs. And so they are reaching out and working with our students. With the counselors, a professional development plan was developed. The students in foster care and students experiencing homelessness also received some special attention with resources, some processes and protocols to help support them. Mental health supports were also developed or continued to be referred students to, and the protocols were followed. With student supports for counselors, counselors have office hours, they're providing counseling, they're also doing career instruction and supports, and they're also working with them through consultation referrals to community agencies. We continue to provide updates and professional development on the tools available to counselors to continue the support for our students.
Teacher librarians came to support the distance learning process by meeting with us and sharing their expertise with digital resources. They in turn created the Librarians webpage that offers a variety of library resources for teachers, online tools, and provide links to ebooks from the Chula Vista Library and the San Diego County Library. Recently, they created a digital help desk, Ask a Librarian, to provide support to parents and students with any library issue. They are also delivering PD on library resources.
Efforts to reach each student have been made through all available means, including email, learning management system, and phone calls. Teachers, counselors, administrators, and support staff have all lended a hand to engage with students and families. Currently, we've been successful with nearly 94% of our students, and we will continue our efforts to decrease the number of disengaged students each and every week of distance learning.
So as we developed these instructional plans and the distance learning plans, we also were looking at data and looking at where our students were at the point in time that school closures occurred, and what were the needs, the academic needs of our students, in particular our seniors. So a graduation committee composed of counselors, teachers, site administrators, and district administrators was formed in response to ensuring that optimal flexibility for students and to once again evaluate the graduation students of the class of 2020, seniors and our super seniors. And the super seniors are students that may be in the learning centers, that may be 13th graders. The consensus from this committee was to temporarily transition from our Sweetwater graduation plan that we had over the last 5 years to the California graduation plan. Let me talk a little bit about those. On the left side of the screen is the Sweetwater graduation plan, which requires 44 credits for a student to complete the graduation requirements. Of those, 8 credits would be English, 8 for social science, 6 credits in math inclusive of algebra, 4 credits in science, 4 credits in PE, 1 credit in health, 2 in visual and performing arts, 4 credits in career technical education, 4 credits in world language, 7 elective credits, and on top of that, 30 hours of community service. With the pandemic and the safety issues that were a huge concern for us, one of the first things that we tackled was looking at the community service requirements and waiving that for our students for the class of 2020 for this school year. And so we've eliminated the community service requirements for our seniors, the class of 2020, and our 13th graders. With that discussion, we further talked about the California graduation plan. And what that plan is, it's the minimum state graduation requirements. And as you notice, it is a little bit different. There are some requirements that have been reduced, and that is inclusive of the reduction of 8 credits of English to 6, 8 credits in social science to 6, the math to 2 full years of math, but also inclusive of that algebra. The PE credits, science credits remain the same. Health is no longer within that plan a requirement. And then the VAPA, CTE, and world language, it's 1 full year of one of those, and the community service is not required. We want to let you know that one of the primary reasons that we chose to do this is that during that 4th quarter of the senior year, many of our students either take the health class online, or they take a credit recovery course that they must complete in order to graduate. Because of the access and opportunity and wanting to ensure that we did no harm to students, we felt that going to the graduation plan that required, the California graduation plan really provided that do no harm to students and maintains students' ability to graduate in a timely manner. So one element that doesn't necessarily have to do with distance learning in terms of academic instruction, but is so critical for us are our after-school programs. And with the collaboration of the agencies and our coordinators and program participants, we collaborated to ensure that we restructured the after-school programs to a virtual program. The state and federal team with Griselda Delgado, Leila Keshani, and Cesar Fernandez collaborated with all the after-school agencies and site coordinators to transition from this in-person after-school program to a virtual distance learning environment, enrichment environment. This occurred through the implementation of weekly meetings to brainstorm ideas for virtual after-school programs. Sites are continuing to monitor the engagement of the students in the after-school programs through attendance collection and checking with students. The goal is to attempt to regain connections with students and have students participate in these after-school programs. So what we've included here is just a sample distance learning enrichment website. All schools with after-school programs have implemented virtual distance learning enrichment programs, but we've highlighted 3 and we're going to demo 1. We do want you to take some additional time on your own to review the plethora of resources and programs offered to our students. The sites have just done an amazing job in ensuring that continuity of the after-school programs. And what we're seeing with Montgomery High School is that they have a way to monitor daily sign-ins. They have a math and action program. They have an English program. They have robotics, and they continue to offer different dynamic programs for students, including any type of video editing, the Aztec Art Club, the leadership program. They still maintain an SAT and ACT prep. And then they have some of those physical education and activities that keep students not only minds engaged, but their bodies engaged in physical activity that is so helpful during this time. There's the dance club, the ballet folklorico, the conditioning course. There's just so many opportunities. And so when you get a chance, please look at each of the programs on the web pages of each school. It really is amazing how in this virtual world, our community has evolved and addressed issues that a few months ago we wouldn't have thought possible. So I heard mentioned earlier a conversation about summer school. And as you know, earlier this year, we took summer school plans for an in-person summer school, but that is changing. We will be transitioning to a distance learning model. We will focus on both asynchronous and synchronous models, including a blended model. Apex will also be utilized as one of the learning platforms. We have set up a method for online registration that we're working with our sites to implement. We have 3 remote sites that we'll be hosting, and that will be Castle Park High School, Hilltop High School, and San Isidro High School. As we continue to work with our SAA partners and our counseling partners to develop, further develop the summer school plan, we'll bring it back to the board so that they can see a detailed plan. Our summer school will go from June 8th to June 26th, and students may take up to 2 distance learning courses for credit during the summer program.
Regarding student devices, I'd like to give you a brief update on that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have identified 6,380 students who needed laptops. This number was ascertained through the information on our SIS, or Student Information System, and MDT, or Mobile Device Tracker System. We also combined this with confirmation surveys we sent out to parents and students. Of these 6,380 students, there are 1,420 Learning Center students that have been identified that require devices. For the past 3 weeks, we have been preparing 3,822 laptops for student use. At this time, at our collection event that occurred last Thursday and Friday, that was hosted at Otay Ranch and at IT on 455 Moss Street, we collected over 610 student devices, of which 285 are good and can be used for distribution to students. We have 387 devices that are out to repair and anticipate to receive them within the next 1.5 weeks. This week, we will have approximately 2,092 devices that will be ready for student distribution. We are planning to distribute 2,000 student devices on May 6th at Otay Ranch. We had the opportunity to verify protocol and processes, and it worked quite well over at Otay Ranch. Another challenge we undertook is preparing devices for staff to allow them to telework in this COVID-19 pandemic situation. We are targeting to complete staff distribution this week. 137 devices will be distributed to staff requiring laptop and VPN, virtual private network, to access systems and information at the district. We also have acquired 3,100 devices. 2,700 of them are Lenovo Chromebooks and 400 Lenovo Windows 10 devices. We anticipate receiving those devices by May 8th. We will need another 3 to 5 days to prepare those, and then we will start to distribute those to students as soon as we can. Next slide, please. As for wireless connectivity, we're finalizing an MOU with Cox Communications regarding the Connect to Compete program. Once we work out the financial payment mechanisms associated to this program, this will be released. The C2C program, Connect to Compete program, has announced that it will be free through July 15th. We are also finalizing an agreement with T-Mobile and Sprint to acquire 1,000 devices that will provide internet access to students, families at home. We anticipate to complete that acquisition this week and to prepare those devices for distribution. We are also working with Qualcomm to acquire 500 LTE-enabled laptops. These devices have broadband capability. Therefore, only a data plan is required for utilizing these devices at home with the internet. We have also identified LTE router VPN technology that we can use on our buses and small vans. They will act as a wireless hotspot, supporting over 110 student connections for each van or vehicle. We plan on piloting 24 buses to be used at our school sites at select parking lots. This implementation is relatively simple. We will be working on a proof of concept this week with Dr. Aguirre and his team. Ana Maria, that concludes my update.
Thank you, David. So as you can see, the development of the distance learning plan was a strategic and comprehensive plan. It involved all levels within the organization. That, however, does not preclude that there have been some bumps along the road. Getting devices and connectivity for all students has been a challenge when we look at back orders and timelines for things to get in place. However, we do feel that we have some strategic backup plans in terms of the hard copies so that we can provide all students access. Please, if you have any questions or comments.
I will go ahead and ask for discussion. Vice President Segura had mentioned during F3 that he had some questions that he was going to save for the presentation. So, Mr. Segura, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, President Tarantino. And I'd just like to say I appreciate all the hard work. And anything I do say, I'm not trying to target anybody. This is just, I mean, we're just putting, you've done a great job in putting this all together, and we're all learning from this, and you're all learning from this. And I would just hope that, you know, all the experiences that in terms of our distance learning, our any mistakes that we have, you know, that we might have made the district or, you know, or different sites, that's being shared so that the same mistakes aren't being made at different schools, if you know what I mean. And I just hope there's a lot of transparency there. And I know there's a lot of hard work, and it's not going to be perfect because, I mean, you just done this in the last few weeks. And I know there's people that, you know, say that we should be, you know, farther along, but, you know, we're doing the best we can. And I appreciate the hard work. I'm glad to see a lot of those questions that I had got answered in terms of the hot spots, and I really that really concerns me. You know, just the students that don't have the hot spots or the connectivity, and I just afraid for them to be left behind. And I know we're still working on I believe you said working on on distributing the hard copies, and so our students right now learning that have connectivity and computers, are they learning right now?
So right now, students, as I mentioned, teachers, and it's teacher choice. Teachers can choose to do a synchronous model, meaning that they are video conferencing live time with students presenting lessons, or they can do the asynchronous model, which means that they provide lessons at the beginning of the week and assignments, and students do those independently. So those are available models right now for students with connectivity. For students without connectivity, so we began instruction last week on April 20th. We were going to distribute hard copies earlier last week. However, because of the pandemic increase and the infection rates particularly in the South Bay, we stopped the release of these instructional lesson plans because we were concerned about our staff. And so this week, taking further precautions, looking at site developed plans, we've instituted this week, all students that need paper copies will receive them.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with that. I know that, you know, in my area code, which is the DO's area code 91911, and going south, you know, into San Ysidro and South San Diego, those are the two highest areas of you know, COVID-19, you know, people that have caught the virus. So that's scary. And I would rather the staff and everybody be safe and healthy, you know, before, instead of rushing into something. So I understand that. I appreciate that. And I have a question around, you know, the grades. Is there an option for no grade for a student that they could retake it? And then I thought there was some mention, and I couldn't find where I wrote it down, about a student that could apply for a waiver, so they wouldn't have to retake a class or something to that effect. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. I don't have that.
Do you want me to try to respond to that, and
sure.
maybe, and Dan can also
sure.
Interject. So with the guidance from the CDE, it was really about doing no harm for students, and the intention was that, in particular for seniors, is that seniors in good standing should be able to graduate. So that's one thing. We talked about within that committee with SEA, we talked about looking at A through F grades, looking at pass-fail or credit-no credit. With our student information system, all of you are aware, it took us about 18 months to develop the specific transcript for our community, for our district. Changing that A through F to a pass-fail and a no credit would put some stress on that transcript and would change how we would have to code that transcript. So looking at that and thinking about the time that would take, we decided to proceed with A through F grades. But the condition of the A through F grades was that we were going to do no harm to students, meaning that the grade that the teacher and the student, that the student had March 13th, that last day of in-person instruction, would be the grade that would be the baseline, and students could only improve from that. Principals do have the ability to waive certain courses for their students. That is part of our administrative regulation, and we have that ability. The implementation of the California grad plan was also implemented to assist with that, so that there would be less courses that principals would need to waive, that we were sort of waiving some of those courses across the district. So we're trying to set up a system that was fair and equitable, didn't impact students negatively in terms of academic grades, and that focused on student grade improvement.
All right, thank you for that answer. And the last thing I have right now would be, I guess, be around licensing for all the programs that we use. And I got to plug in my computer. I got to do that right now. So anyways, it was around the licensing. I meant to bring this up, is that I was told that there were some programs that our students were utilized, but they couldn't utilize it. I think one of them was Apex, because there wasn't enough licensing. And I understand why that happened, because we have everybody's doing it online now, and just how we're addressing that. And I need to run upstairs to get my my cable, or else I'm gonna go offline.
Yeah, so very quickly, we are purchasing licenses for Apex. We normally carry about 1,000 across the district. Curriculum and Instruction Office purchases those licenses with our instructional monies. We attribute those to school sites. In the past, we did not utilize them for the primary for our learning centers. but we are purchasing 1,600 additional licenses at a highly reduced cost from Apex, and that will go into effect tomorrow morning.
All right, thank you. That's it for me right now, Mr. Tarantino. I'm going to go get my charging cable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Segura. Let's move to Mr. Pike. Do you have any questions on the plan? Hello? Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Pike. How about Mr. Solis? Oh, are you there?
Yeah, you don't have to. Mine shuts off, I guess, automatically after a while. No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Well, we have a picture of markers and index cards instead of your face. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that, but I will check it out.
Okay, all right.
That's
Just FYI. There you go. Okay, now we just have your initials, so you must be doing something to correct that. Mr. Solis.
Yes, thank you, President Tarantino. Thank you, Dr. Alvarez, for all the work of the team, for everything that you guys have done. My question was regarding to the buses. Do we know what the range of the Wi-Fi or the hotspot's going to be for those buses?
I'm going to have Mr. De La Calzada respond to that.
Sure. Yes, Mr. Solis, it ranges from 300 to 600 feet. So again, we're going to be proving that concept within a week, and so we'll be able to confirm the distance. We'll also be able to use our large parking spot areas at the schools, so to provide some security as well. And also, we can put multiple vehicles in a particular location to up the support of from 110 students to 220, or multiple devices in a large bus. But again, we're working out those configuration items with Moises and his team and Jenna Souther.
Oh, wonderful. And so if we're going to be using our parking lots, that means we're going to allow students vehicles or bicycles or however they arrive to get into the parking lots?
Yes, we plan on doing that at a preset time, maybe from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening. We would prohibit or make sure that they don't congregate. So hopefully they'll just be in their cars and to practice social distancing.
Okay. Will we have anybody there to observe that, make sure that we're...
Dr. Geary, if you'd like to answer, or I would suspect that we can make sure that there's going to be some observation or protocol in using the parking lots during the day.
Right. So thank you, David. So right now we actually currently, as you mentioned, as you may recall, there was a slide there about asset protection. We do have a skeleton crew at each of our campuses. At some campuses, it's from 7 to 10. At other campuses, 7 to 7. But we do have coverage, and in addition to that, we have maintenance crews that are doing rounds. So we those are the types of details that Mr. De La Calzada and myself are working on in terms of what would be available to ensure that we can provide access in a way that's safe and observing the requirements for physical distancing.
Okay, thank you. And I heard from a pretty good source that there may be a possibility of some funding through UCSD. I don't know if you've heard any of that, or if I can get you that information, and also through the City of National City, so to help with some of the hotspots and whatnot.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Solis, or not? Is
No,
that
that's
it?
That's
Oh,
it.
okay, thank you. Mrs. Hall.
Thank you, President Tarantino, and I also echo my fellow board members' comments and thanks to the hard work that's being done by the teaching and learning staff and by the support of all the IT staff for this distance learning push, and Dr. Aguirre and Eric Span for the nutrition. I mean, I know that I've had a couple conversations with Senator Benhueso over the needs of the district when I was doing some advocacy, and also a couple of other legislators, and they were very emphatic about the need to ensure that that our families and communities were having access to food, because that is such a high need for all of us. So I want to thank and recognize the district in their efforts on that behalf. I was wondering about, I typed in a chat a request that I get I would like personally a transcript of Mr. Delicazada's presentation, what he said. I mean, we have the slides, but I'd like to have a transcript so I can refer back to his information. And also, I would request that we get the cost of that when it's realized. Currently, he says they're working on T-Mobile, Sprint, Wi-Fi, some different devices coming from different entities. If those are costs, what are they? Because I want to make sure I'm aware. I want to make sure I'm aware, but I also need that information for the advocacy efforts that we're trying to make. There's also a need to have, I'm glad that they're doing all this expansion of the licenses and the technology and the distance learning and all the PD, because all of those costs connected to all of that, of course, are part of what we expect federal dollars, we hope, will be provided. We know that there's some coming, but it's certainly not going to be substantial enough to meet the needs of our district. So we do need to have that as board members, really particular costing information and projections on those costs, so that we can ensure that we're following up with not only our state legislators and giving them the particular information they need so they can do that, but also our governor and our federal legislators. It's an effort we're joining with other school districts across the nation. And so I think that's important, and the more we have that information, the sooner we have those projections, the better. I do have a concern about the special ed pieces of our plan, but I know every district across the state is struggling in the same way because it is so different from the norm. And I'm sure that I have heard about the IDEA not being waived, the whole federal compliance. And I would like to understand, and in the future here, if we know anything about the maintenance of effort requirements on the fiscal side of that, if there's going to be any movement to allow states to have some kind of consideration when it comes to maintaining a level of expenditure for the IDEA, because at this time we may not be, or even in the next few months, having the same type of expenses for those students. I also thought it's not connected to distance learning, but I would like to request that we get that report on the special ed from the consultant as soon as possible. So I appreciate everyone's efforts. I know that there's a lot of connectivity. I know that our counselors are working hard. I'd also like to hear what school psychologists have been doing during this time to support students and to ensure that that staff and students and their families, of course all of us, have that, are mindful of our own mental health needs and emotional learning. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Okay, I had some questions as well, and again, like everyone else has said, definitely this effort of putting together a distance learning plan has really shown again that we are stronger when we work together, and I think that this whole project is an example of that. So getting back to some of the information that was in the presentation. So we are going to have summer school between June 8th and June 26th. And students will be able to take 2 distance learning classes for credit. Will that be available for all students or just juniors and sophomores and maybe super seniors? Who is in that population that's going to be able to access the summer school program?
So normally we prioritize our seniors, our super seniors, our seniors that would graduate in the class of 2020, and our juniors. But as with the summer school last year, we also had quite a few underclass students represented. And so we have augmented the number of licenses that we have with Apex. We also have developed through options and some of our other school sites, blended learning courses that are available that are at no cost to us because they have been developed by the district. And so I think in the model that we're developing, we have lots of options for students that we can accommodate students that need to take summer school. And
what about students who are currently in the alt-ed program, either via a learning center or independent study? Would they be able to, and they're in progress and maybe on their way to finishing those classes, would they have the opportunity to access this summer school program, or would they continue in the programs in which they are already?
So that's one of the areas that we haven't finalized in terms of their continuity with the independent study or the alternative. However, with summer school, they could certainly join summer school. So I think we need to fine tune some of that aspect of what happens to a student who's in progress.
Okay. Let's see. You know, you mentioned about grades and that whatever a student got on March 13th for their grades as of March 13th would be the baseline, and they could only go up. So what if the progress that they make is deemed to be not sufficient enough to raise their grade? Then would they still receive an F grade if they had an F on the March 13th?
So although we said that it was great improvement, we hope that teachers take into consideration the crisis and the situation that we're in. We do have some students who would potentially have the ability to raise their grade in a normal situation and may not have that ability now. And so I think that check-in with the student is so critical to find out where the student is in that. So if we can help support, that is definitely something that needs to be included. We will be reconnecting with SCA. We're trying to meet with them. We didn't meet with them the first week of with the large committee, the first week of implementation of distance learning, because there was so much on their plate. But we are meeting with them later this week, and that is one of the discussion points that we will have. Okay,
thank you. In listening to the speakers who spoke on items that were not on the agenda, there seems to be a disconnect between what we've just seen in terms of the distribution of materials and what the speakers, some of the speakers who came forward during that time, what their experience is. And I was wondering if someone could, or anyone could kind of pinpoint where's the disconnect, because it sounds like there is a plan, and why is it that in the field there seems to be this disconnect that there is no plan and there is no distribution for materials and non-digital devices and all that other stuff. So any idea about where that disconnect comes from?
Yeah, I've been disappointed by hearing that. We did send out all district email on the 18th of April basically outlining to students and parents and families and staff all of the elements that we felt were crucial, including the distribution of hard copies, the distribution or the purchasing of devices, connectivity, and we provided a general timeline for those elements. I think, unfortunately, we did not label that specifically for teachers, and they may have missed that email. But we also did post it on our website and other sites so that teachers would have the access. I think part of the disconnect is that we did have to put on hold for about 2 weeks the distribution plan, because as I mentioned before, we had a very large increase of community members infected with COVID-19, and to really, in abundance of caution, to minimize and mitigate the spread in terms of things that we were doing as a district, we put on hold the distribution of those items, whether it was hard copies, maybe chargers or essential items that students or teachers needed from school sites, and particularly students. Maybe that was not broadcast as widely as we should have. It's just really difficult in this time there's so many moving parts. Yes. And I think we just have to over communicate. Even though we feel we're communicating and we're sending out information and we feel we're sending it out in a timely fashion, we just have to send that out through all avenues and just ensure that everyone is committed to that. And as I mentioned, we didn't meet with SEA in particular the first week of implementation because they had a lot on their plate. And so we didn't want to add one other layer, but we are going to have a weekly communication with SEA to ensure that that information they're requesting is broadcast in a manner that is accessible to them.
And Dr. Alvarez, did the rank and file teacher know who was on the distance learning committee, who of their colleagues were on the distance learning committee, so like that if they had questions, they could go directly to those individuals who were on the committees, or was that advertised or not? So
we didn't advertise, but I believe that SCA with their executive board did have weekly meetings, and I know the site reps have been working very closely with the administration to navigate through the MOU, to navigate through any questions, and they've been very helpful at sites. So I believe that there is a system to ensure that communication is across the district and that teachers can go directly to SEA members. Okay.
And the last bit of concerns were about, and this is probably directed to Mr. De La Calzada, about the cost effectiveness of the purchases that we've made, and there was a mention in terms of having an extra cost for a district logo to be put on the computers. David, could you address the how we procured these devices and maybe address some of the cost issues that were brought up during, again, the public comment?
Yes, Mr. Tarantino. I was somewhat confused. I didn't follow the logic there because we did go through a piggyback. So basically, we did get the lowest price available. However, we also used the term Cisco. And maybe that's part of another item that they wanted to question or find out more information of. However, this was not Cisco equipment, so I can certainly get the itemization and work with Dr. Salkeld and Mr. Williams on identifying the specifics related to the purchase and the acquisition of the 3,100 devices, which I'm presuming is the 3,100 computers, the 2,700 Lenovo Chromebooks, and the 400 Lenovo Windows 10 devices. They made mention to the Lenovo 3E device. I don't know if that's a specific model they were researching. However, if I could get more information on those questions, then I can certainly gather the information and present it to you.
Okay, well, what I'm referring to is your presentation on April 13th in terms of the cost and how we procured it with the piggyback with LA Unified. And if I recall correctly, some of the discounts were as much as 55% discounted rate. And so I don't know where these other costs are coming from, but I thought, a 55% discount, it sounded pretty good to me, but maybe, there was something better out there. But again, everybody was in a crunch to order these, and I think you did the best that you did. And so I don't know. I think you've already given that information, is my point, David. You gave that information on April 13th, and I don't know that you need to reinvent the wheel. I was just asking for some confirmation in terms of you got the best price that you could at the time and in competition with everybody else, and so that's where we are.
Mr. Tarantino?
Yes,
Karen.
Dr.
Could we have George Williams respond to that question as well, please?
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Frank, this is Nick. I'm going to have another question after it's done.
All right.
Hi, good evening. It's George Williams. Would you mind repeating the question?
There were during oral communication on non-agenda items, George, there were a number of speakers brought up the fact that the cost and how we procured these 3,100 devices, that the cost wasn't cost effective, and we were sometimes paying for double warranty and all this other stuff. And so I was just when Mr. De La Calzada made the presentation on April 13th in terms of how we got it and the fact that it was a piggyback project with LA Unified, and that he outlined the fact that there was discounts on the items up to 55%. I thought that was a pretty good deal, and yet there's some questions from members of the community that that wasn't quite a good deal. So
okay, thank you.
I don't know. Again, I'm looking at a process where everybody's in competition for the same items, and I thought the presentation that was made on April 13th was a good presentation. It was sound, and we did save money. But I was just asking if maybe you had some further insight into some of the comments that were made during oral communication.
No, no insight into it. No comments either, but I do know, we just want to make sure that the information that was researched by the public was apples to apples with what we have. So sometimes when you do, Google searches is kind of not the same. There's some spec differences.
So George, could you just reiterate for the board and for the public's benefit just that process that we use?
Sure. So basically what we did is we reached out to Ari Jones. There's a Los Angeles Unified School District has a bid that was available through Piggyback, which other districts can take advantage of to get these substantial discounts. And so, of course, we follow the procurement public contract codes that allow us to piggyback off of this contract. The LA Unified contract is good for 2 years. And so purchasing that allowed, us to get the product streamlined, and also we avoided, administration costs of doing our own bid.
think we lost them. I think we might have lost them.
Frank's muted.
Mr. Tarantino, you're muted.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Dr. Jane, do you have any other comments before I go back to Mr. Segura, who had one more?
No. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Tarantino. Yeah, I forgot to ask. I recently saw that the city of Chula Vista bought 1,000 hotspots, and I was hoping that we have contacted them already. I know there wasn't a plan to distribute them yet, but hopefully the district can reach out to them and maybe try to get some of those if possible. And then I remember hearing that we had like a 94% contact rate with our students. I'd be interested to seeing once we get going with education, with the students learning. I'd like to kind of know maybe a percentage of how many students are actually checking in with the teachers and actually learning. And then the last thing I had is that I'm sure we're going to. I don't know if it's been mentioned that if once our students get some computers, or if they have problems with their computers they currently have, do we have a process set up for computer exchange?
So I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to have David answer some of it. So you'll notice that on the one slide.
Turn off your computer audio.
Hang on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's echoing.
Yes, I can.
Every week we're getting feedback from the schools about engaging with students. And so this was this past week's engagement numbers, and every week we're getting that from schools. And so it's a weekly effort to contact and be in contact with every student. And so that's one of your questions, Mr. Segura, about that. So we're going to continue to, strive to get that to be 100%. But David, you can respond to your conversations with the city manager in Chula Vista and Mr. Segura's third question.
Yes, we did follow up with that program regarding Chula Vista Elementary's program. Their data plan or monthly rate was double. It was $20 per month. And so consequently, the plan that we have is basically $10 a month. And so we're proceeding with that plan as opposed to Chula Vista's.
I'm hearing somebody, I think it's Deanne talking, so
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, David.
Okay.
Yes.
So I didn't know if you heard the response, but we did investigate the Chula Vista program, and they were paying twice as much for the data plan on a monthly basis. And so our plan was better, and that's why we're proceeding with the T-Mobile Sprint program that we finalized.
But I think Mr. Segura asked about Chula Vista, the city.
Yeah, the city had 1,000 hotspots that they paid for with a grant. So why would they charge if it was just for the equipment they bought? Or I know they bought $600,000 worth of hotspots with a grant, and I thought they were going to be free for a few months. That's what I had heard. Maybe I misheard.
No, I will follow up on that. We thought that there was going to be some portion of that was free, at least in our initial meeting. Basically, it was a charge for the device, and then there's a monthly rate of $20. And so we can certainly confirm and make sure that we didn't miss out. But there were charges on both sides. Will do.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yes.
Just a follow-up with the 93.6% of students being engaged. Is it possible to get like a tally of per school, like what the percentage is for each school, just so we can see that?
Yes, we have that data available.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
So,
okay.
Mr. Chair, just last question. So,
sure.
So maybe I'm not understanding, but the engage part, is that the same thing as learning? That's what I know we're engaged and they communicate, but aren't we trying to continue the learning? Is that what we're saying is the same as if a student checks in, that means they're learning, or how are we, checking that? See what's really happening with learning, not just emailing or a phone call that they've checked in, just, that they actually are participating.
We will follow up on that, but we've defined engagement, number one, by contact, because we want to ensure that there is a mutual contact, that it's back and forth, that it's not just one way. And then we also want to ensure that they're engaging in learning. So that means responding to emails, assignments, questions about the assignments, those types of things. So we'll continue to monitor that. Each week we provide a link for our sites to upload which students have not been contacted, so that school sites can follow up individually with those students.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks to all of you for the presentation, and we will move on to M2, and that was pulled by Mr. Segura. And M2 is approve, ratify planning and construction consultant agreements and amendments. Mr. Segura.
Let me unmute there. No, I was just happy and glad to see that we are moving forward with some construction in our district, and that we're putting, some community members to work, and that, they'll be able to earn a living, and we're getting things going and having activity and construction, especially when the schools are empty. That's the best time, and the workers are more productive and all that sort of stuff. So I just really appreciate all that's happening there to make that happen and continue to go.
Thank you, Mr. Segura. Any other discussion? If not, then I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Segura, seconded by Solis. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Collier?
He's gone off.
Oh, okay. Hall? Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, item N1, and item N1 is regarding purchase orders issued for the period of March 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2020, and I was the one who pulled that, and I just have a general question. In looking at a number of purchase orders, and I'm looking at the detailed purchase order listing, there's a number of purchase orders that were made for items which, because of the stay in place directive from the state and from county public health, we're no longer able to utilize those. I'll give you an example. On page 43 of the detailed order listing, and I'm looking at purchase order 566776, and that was a purchase for Adelante Latino Student Conference, healthy snacks to be used by the people who are putting on the conference, and that's $250, one example. Another example, page 50, I'm looking at purchase order 566812, provide RT charter bus services to Marina Village for Castle Park High School and Montgomery High School on May 7th, 2020. I believe that had something to do with computer application. They were going to give presentations, $962. I won't go on to other things, but my general question is, are we having trouble getting reimbursements back from these vendors since some of these activities can't be carried forward?
That would be Dr. Salkeld who will respond to that.
I don't know if that would go to
Didn't hear me.
Dr. Salkeld.
Dr. Salkeld, yes.
Williams. Okay.
Good evening, President Tarantino. So in response to your question.
So you have to unmute on there.
So this
but I don't know.
report, it does reflect all of the activity for the month of March, but we have been in contact with various departments, state and federal as an example. So if you highlighted first was Smart and Final. So this report gives us all the detail of what was issued in terms of purchase orders, but our purchasing manager, George Williams, has been working very closely with the state and federal office regarding any cancellation of those particular requisitions. So we do have those noted for any of those items. As it relates to the transportation, we were actually on a call last week with our assistant principals and our director of transportation. Jenna Sather was on that call. So many of our schools have canceled those. It's also gone through the purchasing department. And we have been working with those vendors for the refunds. What some have updated us on is it might take perhaps a little bit longer in terms of that reimbursement, perhaps around 4 to 6 weeks. But they've been working with us very collaboratively in terms of any requisition or purchase order that have been processed and needs to be canceled. So there's nothing that we would expect. I mean, it's just going to be a little bit timely delay in terms of that reimbursement being processed, but we anticipate getting those before June 30th.
Great. That's all I wanted to know, if we were getting any pushback from the vendors, and it sounds like we aren't. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions, comments about N1? If not, I'll make a motion to ratify the purchase orders issued for the period of March 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2020. Is there second?
Solis.
Seconded by Solis. And so, Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. Next item is item N4, which is the approval of renewable designated contracts. And that was pulled by Mr. Segura.
Thank you. I was just wanted to say, for the record, I'm glad we still continue with the whistleblower on our third-party hotline, and I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Segura, seconded by Pike. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda is O4, and that was...
O2, sir.
Oh, O2?
Yes. Pulled by Mrs.
I'm
Hall.
sorry, Mrs. Hall. Yes, I got it. I missed it. Approve ratified purchase of a bus replacement asset through Joint Powers Authority subrogation process. That's a mouthful. Mrs. Hall.
Yes, I think my question was about the reimbursement. That the full cost is to be reimbursed on this item? Is that correct? I think that question is probably for Dr. Aguirre.
Yes, that's
Mr.
correct.
President.
And yes, Dr. Aguirre?
That is correct. The full price upon us acquiring the bus, we will be reimbursed for the totality of the amount.
Is that that's repair for it or a new bus? Because it's not a price of a new bus, right?
No, it is. It's the replacement with a new bus. It's not the larger rear engine buses.
Okay.
This is a conventional bus, right? So it's not the really, really big ones. But it is for the full price. They give us some funding at the front end, but upon us letting them know that we have received the bus, they will give us the full reimbursement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions on O2? If not, I'll entertain a motion to...
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second, Solis.
Moved by Hall, seconded by Solis. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, now we go on to O4, which is approve the revised letter of intent with SunPower for grant submission of the Equity Self-Generation Incentive Program, SGIP. Mr. Segura.
Yes, I would just like to say I'm glad that we were able to move forward with this, and I'm not glad that we had the COVID, which allowed us to get us another month to look at this. And I know Dr. Getty and the team and the outfit were able to designate or look at 3 other schools where we can maybe put this into qualify and put this into the plan, and hopefully we'll get this grant and be able to do some battery storage along with our solar at those sites. So with that, I'll make a motion to accept or approve 04.
Second, Solis.
Okay, it's been moved by Segura, seconded by Solis. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall,
Yes.
Solis,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Tarantino.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Let's move on to Q3, pulled by both Hall and Segura. Who would like to go first?
Mr. Segura.
I was going to say Paula because I've been talking so much already, but I'll go. So I just really believe this is going to be a critical, resolution for us moving forward. As we know, we're going to need federal funding for what's happening over the last couple of months, and the economy and the stock market and just and all that. And we know our state funding is going to go down, and they have to balance the budget, just like we have to balance the budget. And the federal government doesn't have to balance the budget, so that's where our resources that we're really going to need to be able to keep us going and help us get through these next several years. And I know we under the last CARES Act, or the first CARES Act, we got there was $13 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but not for all the school districts and educational institutions in the country. That end up being only half of 1% of the $2.2 trillion, went to help education, and that's ridiculously low. Hopefully, with our advocacy and all this, and there's a lot of, we're going to need, 200. It's in that resolution. We're asking for 200 billion for now and another 350 billion in the next couple of years, just to keep us going and help us invest in the students. We need to invest in our students and be able to keep to keep our education system going and show that we care for our students and all the educators and keep our learning going. That's all I had with that.
I had to unmute. Mrs. Hall.
Yes, thank you. I'm in total agreement and stand behind Mr. Segura on that, and also to draw attention to the fact that our school districts provide not just an educational experience to students, we provide job and stability to so many families, especially in San Diego County. I couldn't even tell you how many families are really dependent on school districts for multiple services, not just in educational, but also, like we talked about in the distance learning planning, feeding families, feeding our kids, providing mental health supports, health services. All those different things are so important. And the federal stimulus that occurred during the 2008 recession was greater than 13 billion. That's a small percentage of what was provided during the 2008 recession, which I believe this will overshadow by far this COVID recession that's coming. So I know that this is very needful, and I'm glad that we've got it with all the verbiage on here, pointing to so many of the different research entities that have supported this resolution. I think it's good. It's a good move for us. Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 4668 in support of federal advocacy to prioritize stable public school funding.
So moved. Nick?
Second.
Okay, moved by Segura, seconded by Hall. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall,
Yes.
Solis,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Tarantino.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next item is item Q5, which
Q-
is
Q4, sir.
I'm sorry, Q4?
Yes, pulled by Mrs. Hall.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Apologize. Go ahead, Mrs. Hall. And Q4 is adopt resolution 4669 designating April 27th to 31st as Gun Violence Prevention Week.
I think that this is a great, I'm glad we're doing this. I think the attention it calls to the safe storage of firearms is critical to school safety, to student safety, to family safety, and I'm proud that the district has put this on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, would you like to make a motion, Mrs. Hall?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved by Hall, seconded by Solis. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall,
Yes.
Solis,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Tarantino.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Next item is Q5. Adopt resolution 4670 of the intent to sell property declared surplus located at 435 3rd Avenue in Chula Vista. Pulled by myself and Mr. Segura. Mr. Segura, you want to go first?
Sure. My question was just going to be, just remind me what that money can be spent on once we do sell it.
So, do you want me to take that, President Tarantino?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So that money can be placed into Fund 40, and Fund 40 is a restricted portion of it's a restricted fund. It has to go towards, it's a special reserve for capital projects. So that's where it could go. It could help offset payments that we currently have pending over for the L Street property.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Segura?
Yes.
Okay. And my question dealt basically with what's in the actual resolution on page 3. It sounds like the board is going to be making the decision in open session. Am I reading that correctly, Dr. Aguirre?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's...
So the process, the way it's played out, since this is going to be in accordance with existing statutes and the waiver was returned back to the district, what we will in essence do is request that bids be submitted to purchasing the Friday prior it comes to the board. At the board meeting, the bids will be unsealed for anybody who may have submitted a bid to be able to see that unsealing of the bids.
Okay. All right. That was my question. Any other questions? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution 4670 of the intent to sell property declared surplus located at 435 3rd Avenue.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Segura, seconded by Hall. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote?
Hall,
Yes.
Solis,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Tarantino.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And last item on the agenda is resolution, number 7, Q7, which is adopt resolution 4672, designating public works projects of school facilities as an essential critical infrastructure sector. Mr. Segura, you hold this.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Just similar to my comments on M2, just glad that we're doing this. to be in line, and that, so that we can keep construction going at our sites and keep our some of our community members working. That's it. I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Segura, seconded by Hall. Madam Clerk, will you call for the vote, which is the adopt resolution 4672 designating public works projects of school facilities as a critical infrastructure sector?
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, with that, again, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and for your patience while we had a few glitches. I will adjourn the open session meeting and we will return to closed session. This meeting is adjourned.